Welcome to this week's Inside Story. Today I'm joined by Phil Olley, the author of Reflection from the White Tunnel. He is a coach and prolific author, in fact. So good morning, Phil.
Morning, Taryn. Nice to be here.
How you doing?
Great. Really good. Despite what 2020 has thrown at us, there's only one way to approach it. Really great.
So you've had quite a turnaround during lockdown.
Yeah, lockdowns. My business was primarily speaking at events and business events and conferences and things like that, and working with companies large and small with their leadership teams and sales teams and that type of thing. And I had some one-to-one coaching and some consultancy work and that type of stuff. And of course, lockdown prevented a lot of that happening. In fact, my diary emptied within a few days of lockdown starting for the rest of the year, and so all kind of business events and conferences and so on obviously disappeared. And not only that, I think it was all the opportunities that I'd been developing for some time as well came to a sudden buffer stop. So it meant that I had to have a bit of a think, just like most people this year, about how to approach life, business, the universe and everything. So,
I mean, if I know anything about you, Phil, you didn't sit on your laurels for very long and you gave yourself a talking to and sorted something out.
Well, yes, I deliberately sat on my laurels, if you want to think of it like that, for 2 weeks. I took 2 weeks where I did nothing but think and just stop. I didn't even think actually very much. I just stopped. I kept my own routine going of, walking every day. I live out in the middle of the country, which is really nice. And it means that I've got some nice walks around me. So I go walking every day at lunchtime. So I carried on doing that sort of thing, kept doing my Tai Chi that I do in the morning and just a few basics. But apart from that, I just expected nothing of myself for a couple of weeks. And then I started to think. And I sat down with a large pad of A3 paper, and I asked myself 2 questions. The first one was, what if this is permanent? And I think that partly that was because I was thinking even back in March that we were not sure how long it was all going to last, but more importantly, we weren't sure which bits and how many bits were going to return to relative normality. And given that, any crisis management situation, it is best to always think, well, what's the worst case? What if this is permanent? And what does that mean for my life, my business life, and so on? And so the second question was, how can I help? And I started thinking in the 6 key areas of my life, what can I do to help the world? Because, there we were, the world had become very geared towards those people who can help in a crisis. So it's obvious that people in the medical profession can help in a crisis. So the plaudits and the value of our society suddenly went towards those people who help. And there we were clapping on a doorstep one Thursday evening, and I thought, well, what do I actually do that can help people? And so I started asking people, how can I help? In all areas of my life. So, even things like, well, I'm fairly proficient with Zoom because I've been using Zoom for 3 years up until that point with clients anyway. So my family, we're all locked down in different parts of the country. So I thought, well, how can I help in my role as a family person? With my elderly father and his partner, and my brother and his family, and my sister and her family, and my children who are spread between Scotland and Manchester and so on and so forth. How can I help? So setting up a weekly family Zoom call was the way in which I thought I can help in that arena. And in various other parts of my life, I started thinking, well, how can I help? How can I help myself the best? And in my business life, I started asking people, how can I now help in their circumstance? And my coaching business has just gone stratospheric as a result of that, as you can imagine. So it means that all the business that I lost because I could no longer appear in person and do events and run my own seminars or anything like that has now all been recouped in one-to-one coaching, which all happens via Zoom. And ironically, that's how I built my business in the late 1999 through the early noughties. I built my business purely through coaching very senior people in large organizations. And I had a team of 17 freelance coaches at one point working for me, doing a number of these big projects, and they were spread all over the world. And in those days, it was all done by telephone or Skype. Now we've got better technology. So it didn't take the brains of an archbishop, and certainly didn't take much of my thought process to think, right, how do I now do this in the modern world with better technology with my clients? So I work with all sorts of people now, and it's great. What I have noticed, and this is something that I hadn't really anticipated, was up until 3 weeks ago, all of my clients suddenly were male, and that had never happened before. So normally I'm about 50-50 split, male-female. Often it's 60% female. Sometimes it's as many as 70% female, but equally it can be 70% male, 30% female. But for the first time ever, and that's in over 20 odd years of coaching, all of my coaching clients were male clients, and they were all business owners, CEOs, managing directors of largish, small to medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. And some of them were one-man bands and small consultancies, and in fact, a couple of other coaches and speakers who I was coaching. So that was an interesting moment when I just thought about why that is, and I haven't quite worked out yet exactly what the trend was a result of, but it was interesting. But now, yes, so I'm filling my diary with all of that, and I've been very busy, and I've written another small book during lockdown as well, and also kept my fitness going. So yeah, I did give myself a couple of weeks off, and then give myself the right, let's get on with it moment. Bit of a pep talk.
You kind of mentioned that you've been in business a long time. Now, before we met, so we met about, was it 3 years ago?
I'm going to say it's, so my book was published 3 years ago, the end of October 2017. So it's perhaps longer than that. It's 3.5, certainly, maybe as many as 4. No, it's longer than that. No, it's 3.5 years. Yeah. Of that.
It seems longer because it's been so good.
I know. Yeah.
So when
it's been a joy.
When we first got together, you'd already published, and you'd been down the traditional publishing route. Which, you know, as we both know, is kind of the thing that a lot of authors want. They think the traditional route is the way to go. But I won't preempt you. You tell me what that journey was like for you.
So I published my first book in 2003, Counting Chickens, with a relatively small traditional publishing house. And the reason I never saw myself as a writer, and I still don't actually. I write in order to fulfill, a kind of strategic business approach to being a speaker and a coach. And right back then, when I wrote Counting Chickens, it was simply to have a book. You know, if you're going to speak on stage, you've got to have a book. That was the mentality. So I thought, right, I'll write it. And I enjoyed the process in part. And the first publisher that I approached was delighted to do it. They did the job, and it did quite well. You know, before there was some media or anything like that, I did some radio and TV appearances in relation to, because I put some back into it on the PR side, and it got me places that I otherwise wouldn't have gotten. It got me speaking and doing speaking and coaching in other places as well that I again otherwise wouldn't have got to. And I left it a while before I wrote another book, and the second book I wrote, that was Results, in 2011, and I approached Pearson, huge publishing house, as we all know, and they published that. And how I managed to convince them to do it is another story. That was a salesman in me coming out. But yeah, I was delighted. And again, that was partly because I wanted to have a book that had a good distribution channels, a good reach into the market. So it appeared at airports and so on and so forth, and it's been translated and it appears all over the world, which is good, from that point of view. So that was that. And then when I met you, I had started writing or started thinking about writing this book, Reflections from the White Tunnel. And in fact, I wrote it in 5 days. And it was really a different type of book that I wanted to get out there because it was more, I suppose, autobiographical in a way. It was certainly more of a personal expose rather than a here's how to achieve goals type book, which Result had been. This was very much more about my experience of waking up dead, literally, on one occasion. And it was all about that going down the White Tunnel. And I wanted something that I had far more control over the publication of it than going to a live publishing house. And then we met at an event at which you were speaking, and I thought, well, she seems to know what she's talking about. So I decided to go the independent route with you, Taryn, because it was a little bit more collaborative in the way that we then got the book out there, rather than going to a large publisher and them saying, right, this is what I want it to look like, this is what the cover's going to be like, like it or lump it sort of thing. And we had a lot more discussion, and then you told me exactly what I had to do anyway. So, but so it felt like I had more control over something that was much more personal.
Yeah. And through Reflections, because I mean, it is a really powerful story, but not only that, the information inside. I mean, we'll talk about Nexus in a minute, but the way that the book connects with some of the things that you do and your own ethos, for me, really resonated, and I felt there was something in it that was really special. It was more than just about the White Tunnel, but talk us through it.
So in 1999, I had an anaphylactic shock. I won't tell the full story because the full story is in the book. Buy the book. And I basically had the full White Tunnel experience where I died and went to the bottom of the White Tunnel. And I remember everything that happened in that moment of disappearing down and going to the end game. And then woke up on a pavement in Edinburgh surrounded by paramedics shoving oxygen masks on my face and trying to get a line into me and all of that stuff. And they saved my life. But I'd had the full experience, the whole, what you think about right at that final 10 seconds as you descend. And I hadn't really talked a huge amount about it on stage in front of audiences, a little bit where it was appropriate during keynote speaking engagements. But I really felt that it was time for me to now get that story out some however many years later, 15 years or so later. And so I sat down and decided in 2016 that this was a year in which I would write another book. I thought, don't want to be a two-book wonder. I got through the difficult second book syndrome, and I thought, right, let's now write another book. And so I decided to sit down and write a book and thought, what am I going to write this time? And it was in that moment that I thought the thing that is just welling up inside me that I feel I need to get out is the story of the near-death experience, but also some of the more esoteric elements of the work that I do around attitude and mindset and how to take responsibility for life and how to basically be the best you can be, because that was really the big message that came back, that we all, your life is your one big chance to create the happiness, the relationships, the business, the life, the personal life, everything that you want. This is your chance, and this is your choice. So I wanted to get that message out there, and so I sat down and did a mind map of the book, and then left it over a weekend. And then on the Monday, I sat down and thought, right, I'm going to give myself to Friday to write this. And the reason for that was that I had a flight to catch to go to Florence. I was meeting someone out in Florence for a short break holiday, and I thought, and she was working out there in the preceding week, and so I thought, right, I'm going to give myself that as the deadline, and if I haven't finished the first draft of the book by Friday, I will not get the flight to Florence, and I will not meet this lady. So I decided to do it, and I was getting up extremely early in the morning, which I'm quite a morning person anyway, extremely early in the morning to do an extra couple of hours. And I'd set myself little deadlines and goals throughout the whole week. And then finally finished on the Friday night and got the flight the Saturday morning from Luton Airport to to Pisa, and there we go. And that was the story.
And then I came along with a big black pen and said, no, I'm going to
Well,
complete
it was a few months later, because having written the book, I'd then parked it.
Yeah.
And so didn't really know where I wanted to take this, but I knew there'd be a time at which I would then get it published. And we met in the following May. So it'd been actually sitting in manuscript form on my computer and so on in a box file for probably about 8 months when we met. And
I mean, as we've said, it's not just the story of the White Tunnel. It's got a lot of really good advice and tips and techniques on how to improve yourself and your business. And so you got a few courses off the back of it, and weekend retreats and things. Yeah.
So the book, although the White Tunnel moment is kind of very much at the heart of the book, or it's certainly at the first chapter and the final chapter, because in the first chapter I describe the incident, in the final chapter I talk about what I saw. So don't jump to the end. In the middle, I separated out into 10 chapters, which I call my 10 fulfillments, because subsequently, having reflected on this White Tunnel experience a number of years later, I came up with what I think are 10 kind of principles for how to be at your best at all times. And these are the 10 fulfillments. And they are part of the book. And it's things like, taking personal responsibility. It's things like living by high personal professional standards. It's that type of stuff. And in there, I take each of these fulfillments and talk about it and use some examples and some ideas that can help you to enact that in your life and in your business life in particular, but also in any aspect of life. And so the book became about those fulfillments, which are again at the heart of some of the work that I do in relation to some of the public seminars that I run. So I run these public events called the Nexus Experience. And I've run Nexus experiences or courses around Nexus for 22 years now. And they are all about how to achieve goals, basically. And that's the bottom line, how to be your best and achieve goals and reach fulfillment in life. And Nexus is all about connection. It's how you connect with yourself. It's how and your true goals and your true purpose. It's also how you connect with other people, how you connect with your missions in life, how you connect with your various roles as a family man, as a or woman, as a business person in your career, whatever it is. It's all about those connections we have. And I think that ironically this year, people are suddenly now reinforcing what's important to them in their connections they have. And I think that's one of the big shifts we've seen this year, because I think people have become extraordinarily disconnected from what was important to them. Ironically, in a very connected world, where you can't move, but a phone goes off somewhere. And now I think that people are starting to realize that there needs to be more depth to their connections in life. So the Nexus principle and those 10 fulfillments is all about how you focus on it and then make moves towards attaining it in every moment of every day. So the seminars I do around that, and then the weekend retreats as well, for those who want to take it a little further, which involves creating a full action plan and a master plan of how you're going to live a more fulfilled life. Having
attended one of those, I can say that I still have my plan, although it's changed as the years have gone on, as they always do. But there are still some aspects to the things that you taught me that I use on a daily basis. And that I go back to when I'm struggling. Certainly the mind map. That was the first time I'd ever done one. And when my head's kind of in a whole sort of buzz and I don't know what I'm doing, that was a really good tool. I won't give away the big tool that that I use every day, but Phil has some very, very good tips. If you get a chance to join one of his seminars, if they start up again, then I highly recommend it. So. After reflections, then you carried on doing all of your courses, but then you said that during lockdown you've written again. Now you've actually gone down the self-publishing route this time.
Yes, so I wanted to produce some very small booklets on very specific aspects of the work that I do with clients, primarily for clients and for interested parties. So these are not things that I'm not, expecting these to become New York Times bestsellers or anything like that. They're not designed for that. But it's more a series of things where I can dig a bit deeper. And I have in mind to do 12 of these over a number of years. It's kind of, as the mood takes me, I'll write another booklet. And they'll be between 40 and 70 pages, really small. So at the beginning of lockdown, of course, quite a lot of my business clients were then finding themselves feeling a little bit underconfident and uncertain financially. And I thought that this was a big issue for most people, and still is. So I wrote a book called The New Money Paradigm, which is just a small booklet, how to create personal prosperity in turbulent times. And it was just it started off as a 4-page PDF that I sent to some of my clients as an initial, right, here we've hit this, the economy is going into free fall. This is what you need to do. This is how you create the right mindset, an abundant mindset rather than a scarcity mindset. And it was working, and people were able to kind of stay focused and build their businesses. And I thought, well, I'll expand that. So I did, and I started to talk about some of the things I talk about on my public events, and put those into this booklet. And there's another one that I'm currently going to write within the next 3 months as well, which is all about 90-day goals. So it's that type of stuff. The money one got leapt to the front of the queue. It wasn't originally going to be the first one, but I thought, that, strike while the iron's hot. And
how did you find self-publishing and learning that the whole side of it? What would you say was the pros of it, and what's been the frustration part?
Well, the big thing about it was, how, for me, it felt quite daunting from a technical point of view as to how you load this thing onto Amazon, but I used their Kindle Direct Publishing route, and following a phone call with you, Taryn, where you were able to point me and reassure me that, the world wasn't going to cave in as soon as I pressed the button, and I wouldn't disappear off the planet. It did give me the confidence to think, right, okay, I can do this. And that was the big issue around self-publishing for me, for this book. I think for many people, however, the big issue around self-publishing is that it becomes a big marketing effort. The whole thing is about marketing, really. It's not about writing books, it's about marketing. And I feel that because I'd set out my stall that this wasn't going to be a massive book, this was really a support structure for clients who were interested and other people who found it and wanted it. I wasn't going to put a huge effort into marketing it. I think we ran a small Facebook ads campaign on it, but that was about it. So it will always sit there on my website, the link to Amazon to buy it, as part of my array of materials, my arsenal of tools for people to use, and it's there forever.
Yeah, I mean, you're quite lucky. I mean, you've got a really good following anyway. You're big on social media. You're well known. So for you,
but that's funny you should say that, because I don't think that I have. But there you go. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
So I think you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of the marketing, because you've got an existing following. You'll have found it a little bit easier. But for people starting out, that's one of the really big things is not knowing exactly how much to do. Because the other side of it is you're very good at writing, and you're very precise in what you put out there, and you've got a team of people that work with you to make sure that everything's done correctly. So I know that when you put it up there, it would have been the very best it could have been. It will have been edited, it will have been proofread, everything would have been laid out correctly, because that's the kind of person you are. But again, there's a lot of people starting out that don't realise that you need to do that, and I think for me that's one of the stumbling blocks.
I think that's true, and one of the big issues I think with choosing your publishing route, to compare that self-publishing with going to a big publisher or coming to an independent publisher like you, which is kind of the hybrid ground. I think that the big issue that people don't address, and they should, and I wish I had way back when I first wrote a book, was the strategy. So understanding what it is you're writing about and what for, where that book fits into your overall strategy for being an author and having a business that needs you to be an author. So for me, I wish I'd started again and was able to just actually sit down and lay out exactly which books I wanted to be published when, and to partner with a publisher and say, right, that's the way we're going to do this, and make that very much at the heart of my overall business strategy. And of course, I didn't, like most people, I sat down and thought, right, I need a book, right, I better write something. And then I found a publisher, and oh, great, you publish it, brilliant, oh my God. Because we all hear these horror stories about, you have to approach 107 publishers and you'll get no in 106 different ways, and then you'll finally get one to say yes, and you think, oh, they're wonderful. But I wish I'd been far more strategic about the whole thing. And I think now my advice to anyone who was either thinking of writing their first book or was on their first or second book, in terms of how they go about it, would be to say, is this the right book to be writing now in the overall scheme of things? And to choose a publishing route and a publisher that fit with that strategy, that you can partner with, that you will go on with, and that you'll have a robust plan as to when you're going to release different books of different types. Now, ironically, and I find this quite interesting, in the world of fiction, this happens. You get a publisher and they become everything to you. If you do well with your first book, you'll get a publisher, and in that world, they then, stick to a genre and so on and so forth, and you just churn out, Bernard Cornwell churns out a sharp book every time he wakes up in the morning, and they're wonderful, and they've got a TV franchise and all that stuff. Now, I know for a fact that, he's written loads of other stuff as well. And indeed, I believe that at an interview once, he was asked, why did he not do more of his Copperhead series set in the American Civil War? And he said, well, it was at that point that I could have done, but a TV company wanted to make a load of Sharp series. So I just kept writing Sharp. But I think that in the world of fiction, people do have a more strategic approach to how many books. Is it a series? Is it a trilogy? Is it a one-off? Is it a character who's going to continue on through? And they partner with their publishers. In the business world, ironically, and we should know better, we don't take such a strategic approach, and I believe that we should. And I certainly should have done over the years. That's a long answer to a relatively short question.
Well, it's never any different with you, Phil. It's always a long answer to a short question.
There are so many words.
So what's next then? What are you doing now?
So I'm now working on another small booklet, which is all about the 90-day goal setting. So that will be, I hope, self-published by Christmas. I haven't actually really started writing it yet, but I had my strategic day yesterday. So that gives us 3 months to get that done. And I like a 3-month goal. Since it's going to be about 3-month goals, then I probably should complete it in 3 months. And then in the new year, I will write the definitive book on the Nexus code, which will then support my public events and seminars, the Nexus Experience. And I will do much more of that. And one day we may all actually be able to get together in rooms together, and I'll be able to perform these Nexus Experiences with the people in the room like I did before, sometimes as many as 100, and maybe even more than that next time. So that was always good fun. I love doing that, and I'm passionate about getting that material out there. So that's the next thing in writing terms, that next year will be the year of the Nexus code.
Brilliant. So that's going to be good, because I say, having done the course with you, it's one of those, it's not time constrained, it's not I think it's as relevant today as it was 3 years ago when I did it, and I think it certainly would be very powerful for what's happening now. Getting that out, I think would be brilliant.
I have been working on the toolkit and updating it given the current experience. But of course, we have to think that in 5 years' time, when we look back at 2020, that might be a dim and distant memory. So you can't then write a definitive book that simply is about 1 year. But I have done quite a lot of work this year on some of the ideas and the tools in there in the light of what's happened. As you say, I think it's become even more important that we're connected with our goals and our purpose and what we really want out of life.
And an excuse for a weekend at Coombe Abbey, really.
Well, indeed, yeah. They won't always be at Coombe Abbey, there might be.
I should be. For those of you who've never been to Coombe Abbey, just outside of Coventry, it's a beautiful place. It's where I used to go as a child, and Phil hosts all these fabulous events. So if you get the chance, definitely, even if it's just for the weekend, Phil stuff aside, it's a nice break.
It's a nice place. It's a nice place to reflect. It's got so much history, and I think it's got a certain ambience to the place that it gives you that opportunity to take the space and to relax into a weekend and just really become a little bit, not self-analytical, but reflective of life, and also optimistic about the future. I think, that's what I like to engender on these events, and particularly, you said earlier that, when you make a plan, it changes. Of course it does. And I always say that when people are creating their life plan on these events, that it's a strategy, it's not a straitjacket. It will change. And over life, we have to make these things flexible, but we create a framework for people to really create optimism for themselves and a kind of forward-thinking approach to life that can only be a good thing.
I like that. Strategy, not straitjacket. That's really good. It's quite clever.
That's in one of my books.
So, okay, if people want to get hold of your books, do you want to give them all a shout out again? So
we've got Counting Chickens. That was the first book. Result was the second book. Reflection for the White Tunnel, that was the book that you published for me, Taryn. And the fourth book is The New Money Paradigm, the small booklet, the first of the series. And they're all available via my website, which I guess you can put in the notes.
Yeah. They're also available on Amazon.
They're all available on Amazon, yeah.
The 3 published ones are all available from good bookshops, should people wish to order it.
Yes, I think they're still all available. Even the one that was published in 2003, they can certainly still order it, I think.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to contact you for some coaching, what's your website, Phil?
The website is www, of course, philolley.com. That's Phil Olley, PHILOLLEY.com.
Yeah.
And you'll come.
Oh, fingers crossed we get to see you soon, and we get to see you either back on stage or back in a room. And if not, I'll grab a coffee sometime.
Definitely. We've been promising that.
I know.
Thanks, Taryn.
We'll speak to you soon.
Take care. Bye for now.